Good afternoon from recording studios in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's time for AP Art Histories, early Christian art to the Renaissance. We're going to get there. Okay, so we're going to start, and this is 250. This is all going to be on the national exam, so we have to go through it. All right, so catacombs in Rome, 200 to 400 CE, Common Era. And basically, this is where the Christians had to hide and do their worshiping, tunneling down below Rome. Because, of course, starting out, they were a small Jewish sect who believed that Jesus was the Messiah. And they were persecuted and killed and all that other stuff. Okay. So, now we're talking about basically late antiquity, I guess. And then we have here Jesus in what's called an orant pose, hands up, or I guess elbows, and then arms up and hands out, which, of course, is somewhat reminiscent of the cross pose by Jesus. And these I guess they're frescoes. It says that on the sheet. So fresco, of course, is when you have wet plaster and you paint into the plaster and the plaster dries and it lasts a long time. Well, and in this case, it did last a long time. We're talking about what, 1800 years. Yes. And then, so as you probably know from driving, Christians used fish as a sign of their Christianity. Sometimes they used lambs. And here you're seeing the Good Shepherd fresco that is also part of the catacombs. All right, finally, we're above ground. And this would be 1422, 1432, which makes sense because remember that the Christians are no longer the hunted down religion. They now are at this point actually the Roman Empire's religion, Holy Roman Empire. And this is called Santa Sabina. And remember what I was talking about, how the plan for this church is similar to the Roman Basilica? Well, here it is. The half circle in the back is called the apse. And then we have the clear story, which is where the windows are. And it's essentially in a rectangle. So there it is, an early Christian church. And are we going inside? Yeah, I guess a little bit. So you've got the altar, which is when you go through what's called the nave, which is, it's easy to remember. The navel is the middle of your, I guess, your body, kind of. The nave is the aisle that's in the middle, and then you have usually, going back to my Catholic days, the altar. And then in the back, when you have that apse, you have an opportunity there to have some art, which we do. And you can see the influence of the Roman Empire with the Corinthian columns. Remember, the Corinthian columns are leafy. And then the arch, the good old arch, is in there for the Romans as well. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And then here's some architecture showing the architectural plan for it. All right, now this is a illuminated manuscript, which we're going to get into after the national exam, after May 15th, a little bit more, because I just find them fascinating. So basically, illuminated manuscript is a book that has paintings in it, and incredible calligraphy as well. And what you're going to notice with these early ones, this is the early 6th century, is that the paintings are really pretty basic. And what this is really setting us up for when we hit the Renaissance is this idea of, the changeover, that you have central point perspective and you have That is, all lines receding in the distance in parallel fashion, which you don't see with the, I don't know, is that a monastery, or is it supposed to represent a city with walls and gates? I don't know. But it is not all lines receding in the distance in parallel fashion. Yeah, so one of the things that you can sort of say to yourself is, okay, so I can see why the Renaissance was such a big leap artistically when you look at the Middle Ages. Now, that's a little, I mean, that's of course a little bit of a point of view that the early art historians in the late 19th century had. They all were Renaissance art historians and believed the Renaissance was, this, that's not very good angel's noise there. They believed that, it was the best of art happened in the Renaissance. So let's not slam the Middle Ages too much, folks. That's all I'm saying. All right. And then here's another part of this. And yeah, so there you go. Now we're looking at San Vitale, which is a very famous church in Ravenna. And Ravenna is in northern Italy. And this was a church built by Justinian, and we'll hear about him a little bit more with Hagia Sophia. So these churches from the Byzantine time period are central dome churches. And we're going to go inside. As you can see, well, I guess we're in the central point right here. I gotta say it, Byzantine churches are, I don't really appreciate them as much as others. I'm kind of a fan of the Gothic, which we're going to get to a little bit later on. Okay, so inside is two very famous mosaics, and this one is of Justinian. And this is emphasizing that he is the ruler of a theology, or a government that is a theocracy. Theocracy, and that's where he rules over the religion and also the government. Government represented by the guys on the left, the religion represented on the right, and then he's got a giant, or is it a bowl? I've always thought it was a giant loaf, but now I'm looking at it, and I just read about this recently. The bread is inside the bowl. I don't know why I thought that was a giant, huge wafer there. And this is emphasizing the idea of transubstantiation in the Catholic Church, that during the church service, the priest turns the bread into the body of Christ and the wine into the blood of Christ. Of course, Protestants don't believe that. I'm a former Catholic. I don't even believe that. But anyways, that's what Catholics believe. And then this is Theodora. I kind of like this one better than the one of Justinian. And she has a giant chalice cup that's going to be filled full of wine. It's kind of fun. Down below in her purple robe are the three wise men. All right. I kind of like her headgear too. Not bad, Theodora. All right, now we're moving to, this is the central dome plan for San Vitale. And now we're going to one of my favorite architectural works in the world, and that, of course, is Hagia Sophia, which is in present-day Turkey, in Istanbul. I've been there. I think I've told you guys that story before. Let's see, January of 1996, I was there. Now, it was originally a church, a Christian church in the Eastern Holy Roman Empire, built by Justinian just for his family to actually worship in. What a selfish dude. And later, of course, Constantinople is taken over by the Ottoman Turks, and they turned it into a mosque, and that's why you see the four towers there, the minarets. And can we go inside? Yeah, we're gonna go inside. What's interesting about this is that there's still a lot of remnants of Justinian's church that the Muslims decided to just keep in there, especially this huge mosaic of Mary and the Virgin and the Christ child. And then what you see here are these roundels, these huge roundels that are a part of Islam, proclaiming Allah as, the only God, and so on and so forth. And now this is in a museum. And across the road is actually the Blue Mosque, which we've seen in class before. Unfortunately, when I was there was this large scaffolding in the middle of the middle large dome. Now, the dome was not technologically sound, and it caved in. It imploded a number of different times. Now it's okay. They bolstered it with smaller domes, as you can see here. And it's quite a sight. It's a fascinating place, Hagia Sophia. All right, at the time, it was the largest dome in the world, which was, the time was 532 to 537. Okay, yeah. And then it's a pendentive dome in that it sits on top of a square. And so that's how that was built. If we were together in class live, I would do a comparison between Hagia Sophia and the Pantheon and the Colosseum. But yeah, can't do it now. Oh well. All right, let's keep going. Okay, these are kind of fun. So these are clasps from the early medieval time period. So let's talk about the Middle Ages, medieval time period. We're basically talking about the fall of the Roman Empire in the 400s up to, I'll say, 1200. I maybe even would go a little further, maybe when the start of the 1300s. So in that time period, we're talking about the Middle Ages. And that's what we're talking about today, really, until we get to, well, no, we won't get to the Renaissance. Okay, so yes, these are really cool clasps. And then this is, so you're looking at this, and if you've been looking at all at the 250 with the Italian Renaissance, or just are, fairly familiar with Raphael and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci and the others, you look at this and you're thinking to yourself, well, yes, I can see why they said that the Middle Ages didn't represent the best in realism, I guess you could say, or the best in realistic modeling of the figures. One of the things you're going to notice, and we'll see this with the Proto-Renaissance, which is the time period just before that Renaissance great flowering of artistic advancement. A lot of big halos. They like to designate certain people as the important people in the painting. In this case, with large gold halos. I don't know, is it just me, or does Mary the Virgin just look not too happy? Jesus is looking fine. With Helix seems fairly okay. Usually in this time period, you're going to see Jesus has a very adult type of posture. And I don't think I really understood that until I had my own kids, but it's true. I don't know, as Middle Ages paintings, Christian paintings go, I don't know, this isn't too bad. What are those angels doing in the background? It's like, they hear something? I don't know. Okay, and then this is a cover page for one of the most famous surviving Middle Ages illuminated manuscripts. And this is the famous Lindisfarne Gospels. It's Hiberno-Saxon, and one of the ways that you can tell it's Hiberno-Saxon is just a lot of intertwining of vegetation and animals. That's how I would kind of say. Yeah, so it's beautiful. I mean, we're talking about, 700 CE here. And then this is a page from the Lindisfarne Gospels. Portrait of St. Luke. So St. Luke has a couple of different things going on. One is the winged bull. That's one of his attributes. And then he's also usually seen painting the supposed first Madonna and Child, which is, nonsense, but still. And he is the patron saint of all Vig kids. So there you go, Viggies. All right. And then here's another part of that gospel. All right, now we're looking at the Great Mosque in Cordoba, Spain. We would have had a great... Okay, sorry about that. Avery was yelling upstairs. Not cool during the lecture. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mosques. Well, this one is really interesting because it was built around a Christian church. Isn't that crazy? And we know that mosques were supposed to, at one time, to be able to hold the entire Muslim community in a city, which it did probably very early on, but not much past that probably. And do we have any interiors here? Hold on a second, guys. No, exterior. Oh, so here's the interior, and this is what's called the mihrab. And whenever you go into a mosque, and I've been to a number, of course, when I was in Istanbul, and I've been in a couple of mosques in the United States as well. The mihrab is a niche that is directing you towards Mecca. It's probably the most important part of a mosque, probably. And so when you go in to pray 5 times a day, if you're very devout, you pray towards the mihrab. And believe it or not, some Western museums have mihrabs. Talk about art by metamorphosis. Because I guess the mosque was destroyed, or somehow the whole thing got to... The Met actually has one that's very, very beautiful. What else do we want to say about mosques? Hold the whole community, points towards Mecca. Oh, you can't go in during prayer if you're a non-believer. And you must have always your shoes off, and if you're a woman, your hair covered. And there's no pews, there's no seating. And that gets to that whole point of everybody is equal in the eyes of Allah. That's good enough. That's a good little review of a mosque. Oh, yes, glad I have this interior shot. What beautiful. It goes for, yards and yards and yards and yards. And my understanding of the red and white painting of the arches is so that you concentrate more towards the mihrab. That's what I've sort of been told. All right, so there you go. And then look at all of these columns inside this thing. We're used to a lot of mosques being domes, right? So a big sort of area in which everybody is praying. But this is a little bit different with the incredible amount of columns. Okay, I really don't know why this is necessarily in the 250. I'm like, wow, this seems really random. But if I remember right, this is from an Islamic land, but it was produced for a Christian patron. That's what I remember of it. And it's got this is beautiful, intricate design. Yeah, so this is the Paix, I'm not going to pronounce it, of Almariga. All right, let's get to Romanesque. All right, so Romanesque church, first of all, the term was meant to be negative. It was meant to be derogatory. And generally with Romanesque churches, they're very heavy. And what do I mean by that? Well, here we go. So first, we're going to go through what's called the portal, and we're going to look at this half a circle, which is called a tympanum. And in the tympanum, it's going to be about Jesus usually. And oftentimes it's about the Last Judgment. You can see that on the right, particularly in the bottom and the middle panel on the right. And so during the Middle Ages, they really emphasized don't sin, right? And if you sin, you're going to hell. And so that's why you see a lot of Last Judgments, a lot of demons, all that kind of stuff. And personally, I don't really want to be reminded of that when I go through a door of a church. But in the Middle Ages, it was all about the stick and not much about carrots. Now, one of the ways that you can tell that this is a Romanesque portal is that it doesn't have what's called jamb sculptures on the side of the doors. This will become a little bit more clear when we look at a Gothic portal, but that's one way that you can tell it's Romanesque right away. And then also, the capitals are not Corinthian. They're not, I'm going backwards. They're not Corinthian. They're not Ionic. They're not Doric plain. There's actual sculptures with inside the capitals. Now remember, the capital is the top of a column. Okay, here's some more differences with regards to the Romanesque. Romanesque columns are typically very thick and heavy. Okay, so that's another way you can tell it's a Romanesque church. And also, there are not 3 levels. There's just the first level and then the clerestory, and then it's gonna be a barrel vault. Okay, so it's not going to be what we call from the Gothic period the ribbed vault. It's going to be just a barrel vault. And also, the paintings on those barrel vaults are mostly gone because they weren't doing fresco. They were just painting on top of the plaster. Okay, so those are all. Okay, so as a result of this heaviness, you're not going to see this level of clerestory that you see in Gothic with the incredible stained glass windows. I don't really mind Romanesque churches. I mean, a lot of people think they're really ugly, but I think they're fine. All right, so that's how let's go through those again real fast. So in essence, there's just a heaviness. There are very thick pillars and columns. There's not a third level. There's just the clerestory and then the bottom level. It's a barrel vault. And in the capitals, there are sculptures, not leaves, not scrolls, or plain. There you go. I think that did it. Oh my gosh, what is this thing? So this is the reliquary of Saint Foy. It's probably one of the most famous reliquaries in the world. And it's your typical Christian gold encrusted reliquary, and inside are the bones of the saint. Now, what would be really interesting, which I've done before on test, is to compare something like this with a African reliquary. Remember those copper heads that were on top of those boxes that held the bones of their ancestors? So we're not all that different with regards to worship of bones in some ways. Okay, are we ready for Gothic yet? Not quite. Okay, now here is the Bayeux Tapestry. And it is not, as you maybe know, not a tapestry. It's actually an embroidery. So it's a misnomer. Lay that on somebody once you get done with this lecture. Maybe you're eating some ice cream or something and just go, you know what? The Bayeux Tapestry is not a tapestry, it's an embroidery. And they're going to go, wow, how do you know that stuff? And then you can just say, hey, AP Art History. What is being presented in the Bayeux Tapestry, of course, is the Norman invasion in 1066 of England. It's the last time, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. It's the last time that England was invaded. Hitler obviously felt like he could do it. He didn't. And he had to go way back to 1066 with the Norman conquest. Okay, Bayeux Tapestry. That's kind of fun. All right, now we're to Gothic. Are we at? Oh, we're at Chartres. I thought we might be at the one in Paris. Hey guys, we're gonna watch a video next week on Notre Dame in Paris, brand new one, and it is a Secrets of the Dead. All right, so let's talk about the architecture of Gothic French cathedrals. One way that you can tell this is Chartres right away is that the bell towers are very unsimilar. On the right is the older one, and on the left is the newer one. And basically what happens is that the High Gothic period, which I think is a little too much, there's just a lot more decoration to it. There's these things called crockets, which are these rounded sort of stone forms. Also, the portal is not very, doesn't have much depth. We'll get to the portal in a minute. And of course, one of the things about Gothic cathedrals is they usually have a rose window, as you see here. Notre Dame in Paris has 3, actually. And then here's the portal. Here are the portals. I'd love to go through this. Wouldn't that be fun? At some point, it's on my bucket list. I am going to get to some of these Gothic cathedrals. Now, one of the things you'll notice are these jam sculptures to the side of the doors. They're kind of funky. They're very thin and disproportionate, but I like them. Yeah, so this is the portal for Chartres. And then let's go in. That's a little bit better of an angel sound than I had at first. I'm warmed up, people. Okay, now, right away, one of the things that you notice is the ribbed vaults as opposed to a barrel vault. That allows, along with a pointed arch and the support of the flying buttresses outside, that allows for incredible, I'll emphasize that once more, incredible height to these Gothic cathedrals. I've been in the National Cathedral in DC a number of times, but it still doesn't get to the height of a good French Gothic cathedral. And then one of the things you'll notice on the side, there are 3 levels. The first level, and then what's called the triforium, and then the clear story with all the stained glass. So you get the height. And so once you got your height going, you're allowed to have thinner walls, and then you put in these incredible stained glass windows. Okay? So very different from Romanesque. Everything's thinner, as they say. And here's an example of the stained glass. Now, Chartres is the only French Gothic cathedral with its original stained glass windows. I know they took them out during World War II, and I don't know, they just must have been done better, had much more better care of them. And then here's the plan. Now, we've got a half circle apse in the back. Okay, that's fine. But then we have what's called the transept in the middle, which makes it into a cross. And then in the middle of the design is the nave, okay? And then you got your side parts, entrances that are part of the transept, which is cool. All right, away from the Gothic churches for a while. Is that it? Is that we've got to go back and do more Gothic churches. I promise I will in the next couple weeks. Now we're back to the illuminated manuscripts. We've taken quite a leap. The last one we looked at was from the 700s. Now we've leaped into actually 1125 to 1245. But still, you know, they have their issues with regards to modeling of the figures on the left. And it's showing something about the apocalypse on the right, which is always fun. It's the dedication page on the left. And apparently it was dedicated to Louis IX. Okay, we only got a few more things to look at. Okay, this thing is crazy. I've been looking at this thing for a very, very long time with my students over, I guess, it's been 20 years. So, Now we're talking about the late medieval period, if you will, 1300s. I would say it's the start of the Renaissance, but then again, it's still late medieval. And what we're seeing here is a Pietà from Germany. And it looks as though Jesus wasn't on a cross. Somebody actually took a shotgun to his hands and his feet and his side, and he's just bubbling blood out of his body. I used to have this question on one of the old study questions. What if your parents found this Pietà wooden sculpture in your closet? What would they think of you? Yeah, maybe they just think, really into medieval sculpture. No, they wouldn't even bat an eye. Who knows? All right. And then now we're looking at the Arena Chapel in Padua and the start of the Proto-Renaissance. I used to have to memorize that it was in the Arena Chapel. In the Arena Chapel, you have frescoes. Yay! So actually painting into the plaster drying. And what you're going to see is Giotto's work. Here's Giotto. He's seen as a bridge figure between the issues in the Proto-Renaissance, where everything didn't look realistic. He bridges to the early Renaissance folks, like Fra Angelico, who did bring it all together with central point perspective and everything else. Now, let's look at this a little bit. So one of the things that Giotto brings into the history of art is that he differentiates his figures. Everybody has a different face. They're reacting differently, and this is called the lamentation. That's when the body has just come off the cross, and they're mourning over the body. We still have gold halos, and what I used to call, and people remember from having taken the first semester course, cheese block mountains. But you don't have gold leaf background. You've actually got some crazy angels. My favorite one is the guy who's, or woman, I don't know, it's androgynous angel, whatever, that's pressing up from what looks the air in the middle there, looking up. Also, there's a bit more roundedness to the figures than we usually see early on in the Proto-Renaissance, so there's more plasticity. It's kind of fun. On the left side, that clover shows Jonah getting swallowed by a whale. The whale looks like a bass. Okay, so this is what's a part of what's called non-Catholics, the Stations of the Cross. And they are essentially these panels, these narrative panels that are telling you the story of Jesus's death. And during Lent, which starts Ash Wednesday and ends Easter, every Friday you're supposed to go to your Catholic church. I used to hate it when I was a little kid. And you do these praying, and I think you use the rosary. I'm sure my aunt did. Each station, you do this whole hullabaloo, and I think there's incense involved, if I remember right. Maybe there's some holy water involved too. I always liked holding the incense. That's kind of fun as an altar boy. Anyways, here's the point I want to make. These panels are for the illiterate Catholics that are in this church. And one of the ways in which Renaissance art differentiates itself from what has come before it is the human quality. There was an effort to humanize these figures of, years and years and years ago, and make them look like they are you. We all know that Jesus would have been a dark person, and of course he's not in this panel. And so if you can't read and write, and you're only just listening to the priest, then you need something more. You need images that are going to instruct you, that are going to make you more likely to make connections between what you're hearing on a Sunday. And so that visual part of the Renaissance is really, really important. Now, I'll tell you, I'm not the first to say something about this. Jesus looks like he's a little chunky. Usually he's seen very, very thin on the cross, but he's been hitting I don't know what he's been hitting, ice cream or something. Okay, and then if you go from that, and you're like, yes, that's two, and this is very important. It wasn't just Christianity, of course, that had incredible illuminated manuscripts. The Jewish faith did, and here you've got Egypt on the left, and the liberation from Egypt, and then preparation for the Passover is what's going on with this. Now, and I'll have it as part of an EMAC. Lots of people are making these books, these Jewish books, on their own, which is interesting. I think during COVID-19, or just generally making them. All right, and then last but not least, well, that's kind of cool. Let's more look at the. I've read a couple of books about these Jewish illuminated manuscripts. And then last but not least, we're going to look at the Alhambra, which is the best palace of the Moors, who were Muslims in Spain, that is still left, that was not destroyed by the Christians. And inside is what's called the Court of the Lions. It's on my bucket list for sure. In Spain, I hope to get there. And then this is the Hall of the Sisters. Now, remember, I didn't say this when we were talking about the mosque, although we've talked about it before. There's three sort of decorative devices, if you will, that are used in mosques. One is vegetation, two, calligraphy, and then three, geometry. And I believe what we're seeing here is at least two. I'm not necessarily seeing calligraphy. I think that's it. Okay, guys. So we're kind of going to split this slide list. I'm going to stop here. Then on Tuesday, we're going to do Northern Italian Renaissance all the way through Baroque, and then we hit Rococo. And then we'll, later in the week, next week, we'll do Rococo through the 20th century, 250, which is what we know the best. All of us know the best because all of us have been in class since January. Then the week of the national exam, we'll do Indigenous America and traditional African. We'll do that probably on Monday or Tuesday of the last week before, of the week of the test. All right, 37 minutes. I went a little bit over. Oh, well. Okay, that's good. Bye.